Coming to you live from several different locations that are not Rob's apartment or studio. It's Rob Has a Podcast. Hello, everybody. Welcome to this Amazing Race Episode 4 recap. My name is Jessica Liese. I am your usual Rob Has a Podcast Amazing Race Wrap-Up co-host, and I am joined tonight by the master of the nipping, nagging nonsense. You know him as the co-host of Celebrity Apprentice, Last Comic Standing, many other delightful shows on the Rob Has a Podcast network. Please welcome to the stage Mr. Mike Bloom.
Thanks for having me, Jess. I'm sorry I got here a little bit late. I took the tuk-tuk. All the long boats were taken, so I had to deal with all the traffic and cats and pool. It's a long story. It's a long story.
You stopped to pet the cats, didn't you?
No, I actually really do not like cats. So if I had known cats were part of the tuk-tuk part, I would have definitely gone with the boats.
If there are no boats, you just swim.
Yeah, I actually don't know how to swim, so this would probably be where I end my race. This is why I'm not on the Amazing Race.
Yeah, you know, you'd end up getting beaten by a new kid.
That's true.
Yeah, so we got a lot of ground to cover tonight. It was a very interesting episode, I thought, especially from a race design standpoint.
Yeah.
This was incredibly different. Like, this is a different format from what we've usually seen. They crammed so many different things in here. It was almost like it was an episode of Amazing Race Australia.
Yeah, it's weird, and I'm sure we'll dive into this detour choices, but it didn't even seem as much as a detour as much as it seemed like a path divergence, you know? Like a fork in the road, considering that it's not, the detour wasn't, you know, you accomplished a set of tasks, each with its own pros and cons. It's just take a mode of transport and complete two tasks, and I would argue that, you know, neither one of any of the four tasks required any sort of skill. Maybe the temple one took a little slower than the cat cafe one, but, I mean, there was like no need to weigh any sort of choice. It was either, oh, go to the boats first. If the boats got filled up, go to the tuk-tuks. It was very, very odd. I wouldn't even call it a detour. Detour technically, I guess. Yeah,
it was. I would almost argue that it is a detour in the much purer definition of the term detour.
Like a literal detour.
It is a literal detour, and especially given that everybody just made a beeline for those boats. Now, do you think that was the right call? Like, if you're in the moment there, is that what you're going to do?
Oh, yeah, considering that they had just gone out of the airport and dealt with heavy amounts of Bangkok traffic going to this first temple, you have to assume, like, okay, am I going... As much as the devil you know is better than the devil you don't, you have to assume, and I think Laura outlined this when she was in the boat, that A, there's no traffic on the water, and B, this boat driver has to know where he's going. I've never seen a case on Amazing Race where a boat driver actually gets lost and has to ask for directions. That would be an embarrassing day for boat drivers everywhere. So I feel like the boats are the way you have to go in this case.
It's true, the boat drivers really can only go one direction.
Yeah, it's exactly. The river only flows one way, and there's not too many landmarks along the river for you to get confused by. Like, oh no, I thought it was that covered bridge, but it's actually the other covered bridge that we're supposed to go past. We don't need a route map of all the waterways within Bangkok.
Right. Now we have had a couple of had a couple of boat-related things where they've had to find something and it's been impossible, but that's been kind of out in the middle of nowhere in like a river delta where there's many different directions you could go.
Yeah, and considering that these are
straightforward.
Yeah, and they're going to two locations on land as well, so you know they might be able to get lost going to those locations on land once they dock. But other than that, it's a simple straight shot forward. And you know the tuk-tuk drivers seem to be doing pretty well for their part, but I mean that traffic had to be, you know, pretty killer, and it definitely shows that even though Blair and Haley did come in second, when they came to the roadblock, they must have been, I think they were like 5th or 6th. So the detour kind of put the tuk-tuk people behind.
Yeah, it definitely, I wonder if, and I'm not sure exactly where everything was in location to everything else, and I really also don't know the difficulty level of the various tasks or how long they had to stay at each task, but I have to imagine it was probably a little bit stacked in favor of like the tuk-tuk tasks being a little bit quicker.
Yeah, I would imagine so, just because, again, the cat feeding is a lot easier than like dipping the candle in and then putting the gold leaf on the statue and doing that weird thing of like pickup sticks / fortune cookies to get a good prognosis for the future. So I guess they tried to even it out in that way, but still, I'm assuming the boats themselves were a lot faster than the tuk-tuks. So by that merit alone, if the main form of transport is faster, the boat people are going to come out on top.
Yeah, it's like, I guess, if you always feel like you're moving, it doesn't matter if you actually take the same amount of time. It's psychologically, it's better.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, like you could sit in traffic for 10 minutes and not feel like you're moving and still get there at the same time as everybody else and be much more upset.
Yeah, and you can tell that those tuk-tuk teams are getting a lot more frustrated than those boat teams were.
Yeah, I guess all the more reason we should be happy to see Blair and Haley in there again.
So we're just now we're just now going to put Blair and Haley through the worst possible situations every episode just to get a meltdown out of them. Is that the point we're at right now?
I think it is. I think it is one of these things where we're just going to ratchet up the stress every episode and see which one of them takes a swing at the other one first.
Yeah, I mean we're in a culture that kind of worships Schadenfreude at this point. So I mean I see no harm in trying to have them go through as much mental fatigue as possible in order to bring out good TV. So I'm there with you.
Yeah, I'm all about it. And I don't know how people out there in Rob Has a Planet feel about offline information, if they consider this spoilery or not. But I will point out that I follow both Blair and Haley on social media. They were watching the episode together tonight, for what that's worth.
Maybe one of them was restrained in order to avoid strangling the other one.
Yeah, maybe there's like a panel of glass and they had the prison phones.
Yeah, exactly. Coming to you from a confined location.
Or maybe they just got used to yelling at each other and, they kind of missed it.
Oh, that's like a drug almost. I need more yelling. I need my fix of the yelling from Haley.
Yeah, you hate it, and then you like it, and kind of start to depend on it. It's a slippery slope, my friend.
It did them well. I mean, they got their second place. As they predicted, they are kind of on the upswing here, in spite of having a pretty major meltdown in the first half of this leg. So I guess good on them, though. They're kind of like they're very faultily put together right now. They're a team that's like kind of tied together with very tiny strings that could snap at any moment.
Well, historically speaking, we have seen teams that are much shakier ground get much further in this race.
That's very true. The most winning team in the entire race was a little shoddily put together.
Just a little bit. Yeah, we got your Dave and Rachel's. We got your Zach and Flo.
Oh boy.
Yeah, we got Jonathan and Victoria made it up to the final 6. It's not necessarily a recipe for getting eliminated if the only way you can communicate with your partner is to yell.
Yeah, so I guess that brings up a good question. It seemed like we got a lot of like blind date arguing this episode, and the preview of what's to come showed a lot more of it as well. And I'm wondering, do you think that's really going to lead to teams' downfalls? Because it seems like, so far we've seen 3 teams eliminated. They're all dating teams. These blind date teams really haven't fallen into that much danger on the larger spectrum of everything.
Yeah, it's true. They're not at the point, I think we're kind of reaching the point, to borrow from another reality show out there in the universe. We're at the point where they've stopped being polite and started getting real.
Okay, so who ate the peanut butter out of the jar with their fingers?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, it's interesting to think about, just because this race is dealing with a lot of different things. It's sort of like blood versus water in terms of like it's a new wrinkle in the game, and we haven't really thought about strangers playing together before. And it turns out that if you, like Jaylani and Jenny said, if you have a like-minded goal, even if you argue the entire time, you're gonna do pretty well at the end of the day. Yeah,
and I was incredibly shocked to see Jaylani and Jenny start to fall apart a little bit this leg, because they were the clear front runners for a very long time.
Yeah, well, that happens a few times, with some teams are like, they're great when they're out in front in the beginning, then they kind of lose steam. I think there was like a father and daughter team from from Amazing Race 10, I think, that was like that. Going international, Sticky and Sam from the Australian version were pretty good too. So there are definitely those teams that like are great right off the gate, and whether it's because of fatigue or just general tasks, they kind of fall apart. That being said, I'm sure Jaylani and Jenny can recover from this, though. Jenny, her, in an episode about cats, her claws really came out this week.
Oh, that was apropos. Apropos, my friend. And I think we're gonna save this bit until I think a little bit later on in our recap. But I thought it was very interesting that they had such a balanced argument towards the end about their strategy, and it really didn't turn as snipey as, like, say, a typical Blair and Haley argument. And the fact that we're 4 episodes in and we have a typical Blair and Haley argument, that says a lot.
And I think that goes to show based on their occupation. Lawyers their job is to formulate their own sound arguments, and I think coming from both of them, their arguments were sound. I would personally slight Jaylani above Jenny in this case, just because I'm pretty sure everyone knew Harley and Jonathan were in last, despite any time that they feel like they might have lost. Harley and Jonathan landed there a good 2 hours after they did, and they had to do a speed bump. So I personally don't see the need for, possibly burning bridges by, saying smell you later and leaving a team in your dust. But Jenny, I guess, made some good points with her rationale of, like, there's no difference between us, running ahead of them at the pit stop or just taking the tuck now. So, as you said, they both had good points. Blair and Haley was much more of like a one-sided argument that wouldn't listen to the other side.
Yeah, and that argument has been about the same exact topic every single time. In fact, at the beginning of the episode, we see them having this argument that it's the same thesis statement. Haley is right about something and Blair doesn't listen, but it was an entirely different something that she was right about from what they were arguing about last episode. It's like, how did they find another one so quickly?
I don't know. I feel like this team is just like in a Groundhog Day, Like, it's just every leg they're just gonna wake up and argue about the exact same things. It's insane. And this was so. I love that one scene where they first land in Bangkok, and then Blair's like, "All right, this leg, Haley's gonna take all the responsibility." And so she's like, "Okay, where do we go?" Okay, go ahead and take it. She's like, "Well, I'll follow you." And it's just like, so I was aggravated for him, just because that's the worst thing you want to hear when you say, okay, you yelled at me for not letting you take the lead. Here, take the lead. And she just responds with, no, you do it.
Yeah, and then his immediate thing, he says, okay, we'll go that way. And she says, no, wait, we don't want to go that way. And make up your mind. So what is the best tactic? How do you think is the best way to handle when you have someone who's an entirely different personality type from you, and you are stuck with this common goal? Like, what's the best tactic if you're Blair?
That's a good question, because again, Haley shows, she's when she's not leading, she wants to lead. When she is leading, she doesn't want to lead. So I guess kind of through experience, you kind of have to pick your battles a little bit. If you feel like there are certain tasks that you can step up on, do so. Otherwise, I guess, let Haley give her pitch first, and then give a calmed and reasonable argument as best as you can to try to counter it, saying, oh, maybe we shouldn't go that direction because the local told us otherwise. And I think the more reasonable you sound, the better that Haley will take it, because I think the main problem that Haley has with Blair is that she thinks Blair's just stubborn and won't listen to her whatsoever, which, to be fair, he has. But I think the more you open up to the possibility of Haley being right, the better she'll be with you.
Yeah, I mean, it's a lot like talking to an animal. You have to just kind of have that. If you have that calm, assertive tone, this is what Cesar Millan has taught me. Calm, assertive helps to keep control of the situation.
And if Haley's misbehaving, should you go like, tss, tss, tss?
Absolutely. That's.
I want to see that now from the coming up on The Amazing Race. Blair starts training Haley like a dog.
Yeah, this season on The Amazing Race. All right, so hey, everybody out there in podcast land, if you're tuning in live, we want to hear your questions. So we would love for you to stick them on the comments to our YouTube page, or you can put them in the chat room, or you can put them up on Twitter with the hashtag RHAP. And the lovely Scott St. Pierre is hanging out behind the scenes, and he is collating all of your questions, and we're going to get to a few of those a little bit later on in the show. I just thought that was a good point, a good stopping point to get out, take a breather, eat some 100-year-old eggs, and take some racer questions. So, Mike, have you heard of the Century Egg before?
I have, but I've heard it by so many different names. It showed up on Survivor China, I think. It's been called the 1,000-year-old egg. Even in this episode, it's called both the 1,000-year-old egg and the Century Egg. And I was not gullible enough this time to believe that it was actually 1,000 years old. I definitely did the first time. I definitely was like, wow, they must have cultivated these eggs like thousands of years ago, and they're just eating them. I don't understand what people are doing with these historical artifacts, but I guess it's just more of a colloquialism for the fact that they like look like they've been preserved for 100 years.
Yeah, I think in reality it's something like less than a year, but I thought these were Chinese. What are they doing eating them in Thailand?
I don't know. They're taking clearly a page from Survivor Thailand in terms of actually adapting Thai culture to their challenges.
Yeah, I guess so. And it sure seemed like, you got to collect 6 things for people to do on this detour. I guess
Yeah.
you gotta fudge a little bit, and people aren't going to notice unless it's their job to notice.
Why do you think the eggs were pink? Do you think it's just so that they were more noticeable?
That's actually, I think that's the color they turn. That is my understanding. I've been on Wikipedia reading about these things.
Mm-hmm. Okay, so I guess yeah, because they put them in like vinegar, like acidic stuff, right?
Yeah, they do, and they pack them up in mud and they bury them. And
Okay.
what happens, there's like chemical reactions over time, and apparently sometimes they also get this like cool leafy pattern all over the outside of the egg, which is related to the alkaline crystallizing. And so I Googled, like, what do these things taste like? Because I really want to know, and I don't want to find out the hard way.
Mm-hmm.
And apparently one of the big byproducts of the egg reaction is ammonia. So
Ooh.
it tastes like a really old hard-boiled egg soaked in ammonia.
Now, I always wonder with the Amazing Race, like when they eat these local delicacies, I don't want to sound too blunt as an American here, but do you really think they're local delicacies, or do you think that foreigners are just kind of playing a trick on Americans, saying, "Ha ha, look at the silly Americans eating our rotten eggs"?
Yeah, it's kind of one of those things that they put out there to see what happens. Like, what can we make? What can we make the foreigners eat? No, I think my understanding is that it's one of those things, like, old people in every culture have a gross thing that they eat.
Mm-hmm.
In my people, it's lutefisk. And there are plenty of old Scandinavian ladies who claim that lutefisk is a delicious thing, and I have eaten it, and it is in no way, shape, or form delicious.
With my people, it's gefilte fish. Same thing.
See, I like gefilte fish, but I'm
It's
a little
it's all right.
strange.
It's all right for me. It's a little salty, but what can you do?
Yeah, so I think it's just one of those cases, or there are a lot of them in China. I think there's also chicken feet, and then in the Philippines you have your balut, which I refuse to believe anybody eats unironically.
No, that's the balut is still one. After seeing it all the time on Survivor and Amazing Race, that's one of those things that one of the foods that I will like put down and walk away and never eat in my life, even if it was for any sum of money. I would never eat a balut.
Yeah, so 1,000/100-year-old egg you would eat before balut?
Yeah, I would because the idea of that I'm eating a duck or a chicken embryo is just like beyond. I'm no vegetarian or animal rights activist, but the idea of actually eating that is sends me over the edge a little bit.
It's food that looks at you, basically.
Yeah,
I understand completely.
yeah. I'll eat 1,000 chicken McNuggets, whatever in chicken nuggets, before I'll eat a balut.
Yeah, but if the chicken McNugget was staring at you, a little different.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. Now, I'm always curious, like, the difference between the Gross Food Challenge on The Amazing Race versus the Gross Food Challenge on Survivor
Hmm.
is that on Survivor, you're really hungry, and I wonder if that makes it easier. Like, they put something in front of you, say it's a delicacy, you're going to eat it because you're starving it as protein.
Yeah, you would think so, but I think even in the case of Survivor, it's all about mind over matter with those, and I think people still, even though it's food, people still get that gag reflex when something tastes nasty because it's not like they're eating 1,000-year-old eggs back at camp. They're eating something at least like relatively edible. So when they get this horrible taste in their mouth, it just sort of activates that gag reflex. Or in Ashley's case in this episode, any egg activates her gag reflex.
That's if you already hate eggs, this is gonna be worse. It's like, I guess, if you already hate cats and you go into a restaurant filled with cats.
Or if you're apparently deathly afraid of cats.
I want to know the story behind that, because there has to be a story behind that.
Yeah, it seems like a step below those weird fears that you see on Maury of like I'm afraid of balloons or like I'm afraid of pickles. Like there has to be something that made her afraid of household cats.
Maybe she just saw Pet Sematary when she was way too young.
That's true. But part of me, the sadist in me, again, Schadenfreude, really wanted this to be like a roaming gnome thing where it's like, great, you went to the cat cafe, carry this cat with you for the rest of the leg. For both her and for Jonathan.
Yeah. They had that one where you had to carry a chicken in a bag.
Yeah, so they could have done it with the cat.
Yeah, this is your roaming gnome cat, and yeah, I was waiting for someone to be allergic. Like, that was the whole thing. The whole episode, as soon as I saw the cats, I'm like, someone's got to be allergic. Come on, allergic.
You would think the producers would have, requested that information from them before they, or were they just like, oh, who's allergic to cats? Great, Jonathan. Great, let's put him in a room full of cats.
Well, they ask you that. I think they ask you that on your application for the race. So that was not something they did not know. They know everything about you by that point.
So they're just sadists then.
Yeah, pretty much. But we knew that about them already.
That's very true.
I mean, look what they're doing to Haley and Blair.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, so I gotta wonder, like, Jonathan, every single episode, it's just like one thing after another with this poor guy. And granted, they didn't have a prayer tonight. It was pretty clear that they were never in the same frame as anybody else. But he was, like, every episode, he's run into something and he's been like, this is my worst fear, realized. I hate this. This is something that I've avoided my entire life. And then he does it anyway. Like, do you think this has really actively slowed them down? Or do you think the race is actively messing with him?
No, I think he's just the type of person that when faced with any type of pressure, instinctively goes, oh my god, I can't do this. Oh my god, no, I can't do this. But then, with luckily he has a partner like Harley that's able to be like, no, pushes him ahead. You can do it, and he does. So maybe that's just part of his personality that he was like slowing himself down. But like you said, it really didn't lead to any sort of like major slowdown for them, unless he was in the airport last leg and was like, oh my god, I can't do this. I can't buy this flight. No, I can't do this. And that's what led to them being late.
Yeah, he's had a deathly fear his whole life of booking his own flights.
Exactly. No. They didn't do this on New Kids Tour. They didn't do this.
Yeah. We had someone to do this for us.
We were playing pool in the dressing room.
Yeah. Was that on their contract, Ryder? Was that like next to the no brown M&Ms in the bowl? They had to have a pool table in their dressing room.
Yeah, and I wonder if it's like, if they're on tour, is it like in every dressing room they have to be in, a pool table has to be there?
Do they bring the pool table with them, or does one have to be procured at the venue?
So they have like their own. Don't worry, we brought our own.
Yeah, we got this.
We got this, guys.
Yeah, and despite having one there, he said he never played it. I guess this was something,
I guess he just liked to observe it more than play it. Or maybe his brother Jordan was hogging all the pool balls.
Yeah, well, Jonathan is the big brother and Jordan's the little brother. He needs to step in and kick some ass here.
Yeah, I agree. He needed to pull some rank if that was the case.
Yeah, absolutely. I think he was the oldest member of the New Kids. He should have been pulling rank all over the place here.
Well, he was the old man while all the other young kids were going off doing things like, I don't know, being with cats or jumping off of high things. Old man Jonathan was just sitting in the corner.
Yeah, maybe the problem was he was the only one who was old enough to drink.
That's true. Just silently like nursing a bottle of whiskey in the corner.
Right. I'm gonna go to the bar. You guys go hang out with the cats and play the pool and do all the things that make you race ready. And then, ironically, he's the one that winds up on The Amazing Race.
Yeah. Oh, the irony of it all.
Yeah. Oh, it's rough. So let's move on. I guess that's about all we have for the Detour. That's pretty much 6 tasks, whatever.
Okay, but before we move on from the Detour, can we talk about the possibly planted fortunes in that temple?
Yeah, we do have to talk about that.
First of all, how could they not read all those fortunes off without putting in bed at the end of every one of them? I mean, that's what you do with fortunes, right?
Yeah, like if you don't do that, you're not doing fortunes correctly.
Exactly. So boo for you racers, but oh man, these especially Kurt and Bergen. I don't know if I think divine intervention had them stumble upon those right fortunes, with both of them are being like, oh, you're not finding anyone anytime soon.
Yeah. The person next to you is not a love match. They're like, oh, gee, you think.
Despite what the producers may have told you.
Two guys being gay is not enough for them to have in common to ensure that they're gonna fall in love.
That should have been one. Because our fortunes are more general, right? It's not like you. It can't always be like you are going to do this. It's more like sage wisdom to impart upon people.
Yeah, but that is my pet peeve about fortune cookies. Can I just tell you? I hate it when I open up my fortune cookie and I'm supposed to find out what's gonna happen to me, and instead I get like some advice or like a platitude.
Yeah, they're not really fortunes as
You're
much
telling
as.
me something about myself that is already existing. That's not helping me with the future.
Yeah, there aren't a finite number of possibilities here. This is not like a magic 8-ball company that's producing these fortunes. They can say, you will come into great fortune tomorrow, or you will come into great fortune the day after tomorrow, or you will come into great fortune a week from now. You have a lot of permutations off of the same fortunes.
Yeah, you will come into great fortune in 23 days, 17 hours, and 56 minutes.
Exactly. So, boo on you, fortune cookie companies. We're throwing shade at you right now.
Yeah, and of course, there's always the old classic when you open up your fortune cookie and it says, "Help! I'm trapped in a fortune cookie factory."
Yes,
I hate it when that happens.
I've only heard the rumors of those. I've yet to see one.
Yeah, me too. Mostly, I just get, you dazzle people with your intellect and wit. I'm like, that's not a fortune. It's not saying I will dazzle. I'm saying I already am, and I know that.
Yeah.
That's not helpful.
The complimentary ones are probably the worst because you're like, I know this about myself. Come on, cookie.
Yeah, and? Yeah, but I enjoyed, like, Mike and Rochelle got the one, like, they open up their fortune, it says, you guys have been dating for a little while, and it seems like it's going really well for you, and it will probably continue to go well. And you should probably let him meet your kid.
Yeah, I was going to say, like, for Mike's, it's like, meet her kid. For Rochelle's, it's like, shave his beard.
Yeah.
We know you don't like the beard. It's okay.
Yeah. And Laura and Tyler get the one that says, I see good luck and fortune for you. And it's like the most generic one. They got the equivalent of the platitude cookie.
Yeah, they had been wiser if they gone, whatever you do, don't get dropped off at the metro station on your way to the pit stop.
Right. Yeah, they got the bad taxi driver. They pulled the wrong fortune there, said you guys will get a bad taxi driver.
Yeah, exactly. It seemed like this was a night for bad taxis on the race, which I think Haley put is part of the race, but it does kind of suck for Tyler and Laura that they were out in the lead for so much of the task, which seemed to be the theme of a lot of first place teams this season, but they just fell behind massively trying to get to that pit stop. Yeah,
they just bled time. It really, at the end, it boiled down to how fast they could find someone who knew what the metal castle was.
Yeah, which, I mean, that's one of those tricky things where, like, it's not a metal castle, it's actually a temple, so, like, it's one of those things if you don't have the right local or you don't have someone on a phone figuring it out, you could be wandering around for hours, as Matt and Ashley did.
Yeah, that was, I mean, it's neither metal nor a castle. What are you going to do?
Yeah, exactly. That's you, and this is the key. I guess the key foil in Amazing Race is that we're Americans plucked fish out of water into an entirely different culture. We have to figure out, it obviously doesn't translate exactly to Metal Castle in Thai, so you kind of have to figure out, like, from context clues. Okay, what can this possibly mean?
Yeah, and I guess the sooner you find someone who's heard that term for it before, the better you did with it.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. But how about this roadblock? Like, this didn't seem like it took anybody longer than 5 minutes to tackle.
No, it was one of these extremely simplistic roadblocks, and it's weird. I thought they were gonna have to, like, move on to another part of it, like, after you remove the transmission, then you have to go put this into the bike, or you have to go fix something else. But no, it was just remove it. Take out the screwdriver what was the narrative that, like, this careless assistant put in there, which how did he do that? Did he just leave it in there and then screw it in? The narrative is a little faulty, but anyway.
It's like the surgery. It's like when you go into surgery and someone leaves a pair of scissors inside you.
Yeah, is that gonna be the next roadblock?
I feel like they've done that one, like, with a mannequin or something before.
Teams must dig into this cadaver and find the pair of tweezers left behind by the careless veterinary assistant.
Well, I definitely saw that, but I think that was actually in Saw. It wasn't actually on The Amazing Race.
Ooh, a Saw-inspired task. Maybe if they go to like a hostel, maybe they can do a
Yeah.
hostel-inspired task, a torture task.
Teams must take this drill and abuse this, kidnapped local.
That could be a nice promotional tie-in if they're still aching for promotions. If there's a new Saw movie coming out and they just go into a room and then Jigsaw appears on the TV and the detour is let's play a game.
Can Jigsaw speak in Phil's voice?
Hello teams. Hello races. It's still the
Well,
puppet.
If Survivor can do movie tie-ins, if they can do a Jack and Jill tie-in where they have to dress like twins, or if they can do a Gulliver Travels tie-in where they have to sit in a giant chair,
They might as well do a Saw tie-in. Of course, that logic is flawless.
Saw 8, you must dig inside this body to find a key to let yourself out of a room.
Yeah, I'm game for that. Let's do a whole season of that. Let's do Amazing Race torture porn.
Well, Amazing Race Blind Date is working out okay. They're not unwilling to try new things.
That's very true. I'll admit, as weird as the leg design was, this episode, I actually really enjoyed a lot of the stuff that was going on with the teams. As I was definitely with you in the beginning of this, of like I was ready to totally bash this season, but I don't know, these teams are really growing on me, Jess.
Yeah, they are. I'm still having a hard time. Sometimes if they show one brunette woman on the screen, I'm not totally sure if it's Allie or Ashley. But other than that, I'm doing okay.
Well, I believe that, I don't want to speak too chauvinistically here, but I believe Ashley is a little more top-heavy.
That's probably true, but if they show them from the neck up, just screwed. They're both wearing purple.
Yeah.
It's a little rough, but almost everybody else I've got a pretty good handle on, and it is a nice mix of personalities.
Yeah, and I think we're getting the drama that we want to out of a lot of these teams, and like the dating teams all seem to have great personalities on their own, and we're getting the drama out of the blind date teams. So it's the only thing that I'm still not happy with is when these producers keep pushing the love angle on us of like they're finding love. Don't make fetch happen, Amazing Race producers. Don't make this love happen when there doesn't need to be. Let's just watch exciting teams, and if something happens, something happens.
Yeah, you land on the mat and Phil's like, so did you guys do it yet? And it's like, nobody needs to know that. I think, it doesn't need to be a blind date. It just needs to be, a stranger pair up. Mm-hmm. And in that respect, I think it's doing very well. And I have another crackpot theory behind this.
All right, what is that?
Why does it take them this long to do a blind date season, and why now and why this angle? Because we always have that one team every season. We have a team that doesn't get along with each other, and we have that team that yells at each other, and it kind of doesn't really know how to communicate, but races really well. And at this point, people know that is a slot they have to fill on the race, and a lot of them play it up. And we have a team like Tim and Marie who were they naturally had that dynamic, but they were also playing it up hugely. And what they're going to get now is they're going to get people applying for the race who are trying to out Tim and Marie. And at that point, it doesn't come off as natural, and it doesn't come off as watchable. So if we just pair up some strangers with strong personalities, we can get that vibe naturally, and they don't know how to manufacture it, and they probably can't even really manufacture it.
Yeah, that's an interesting theory, I guess, because I'm sure, and you've talked with teams in the past, I'm sure they definitely go in there. Like the Afghanimals, for example, when they went into their first season, I'm sure they had a plan of like, this is how we're going to behave. But without that plan, you're doing it more so as an individual, and you're kind of less likely to do so, especially when working with another person. Like, I'm sure Blair does not mean to come off like a jerk. I think he wanted to come in and just be a good racer, and I think he was actually one of the more positive people going into the race, but now he's become something clearly different. So I could definitely see some legs to that theory.
Yeah, I think, you're not going to go with your blind date person, you're not going to sit in the hotel room at the pit stop saying, well, how about on this leg we make a joke about this, and what if we do this in our confessional? It gets a little rehearsed. And it does kind of inject this freshness to it.
Yeah, there are a lot. There is. I'll say this season there are a lot of fresh elements to it because I mean the idea of the Amazing Race is fresh. I don't think anybody picks their partner in life or their family members or friends with the intention of saying I want to pick the people that I want to go on a race around the world with, to start the relationship. So the fact that they're kind of starting their relationship with the same goal in mind brings up so many different opportunities, and we're seeing teams really drive with it. We're seeing teams fight it. We've seen teams fight and drive with it. So there's a lot of cool stuff going on. It just seems like everything surrounding the teams might not be so great this season. But if the teams are good, then I'm happy.
Yeah, well, I mean, that was going to be my next question. Like, is it seeming obvious again, like it was in season 24, that they're cutting corners cost-wise? And like this is 4 legs in 2 countries, and we've had 2 of these legs now where people are arriving at the map pretty close together. Like, do you think maybe they're relying a little too heavily on the gimmick to overshadow the fact that they're cutting corners?
I would definitely say so. I mean, let's look at the route so far. It basically looks like a season of Amazing Race Asia, considering that we've only been to Japan and Thailand at this point. And in the preview, I mean, we saw them like hiking in a desert, but that's the only shot I really saw of them, the remote chance of them traveling outside an Asian country.
Well, they've got deserts in Asia.
Mongolian deserts.
Yeah, maybe they're going to Mongolia.
So I would say I completely agree. It's the example, and I apologize to those of you that don't watch Survivor out there that we're making so many comparisons this episode, but it's definitely it's definitely like when they reuse locations for Survivor 2 seasons in a row when they film in the same location and they just base the second one off of a twist. How it doesn't become so much about the location. Like Survivor Philippines and Caramoan. Philippines was very much about the culture almost, and Caramoan was just more about the twist since they happened to be there the second time. So I feel like they're throwing a lot of weight behind this gimmick and watching people just race that didn't know each other, that they felt like it might not have mattered so much where they go.
Yeah, and at least they're trying to make the legs different, which I don't think they always were in season 24.
Yeah, that's very true. I mean, you brought this up, I think, during season 24 about how if you're doing stuff in the same country, at least go to different locales. Like, if you go somewhere pastoral in the first leg and somewhere more urban in the second leg, which they did slightly. They commented that Bangkok seems like a more cramped urban place, which led to different tasks. And they did a lot more traditional things this leg than they did last leg. So good on the producers for doing that. I'm just hoping that they'll skip out of Asia sometime soon.
Yeah, we are due to leave the continent of Asia. That is for sure. All right, so I'm going to try to take a couple of questions here, but I see that Scott has kind of hidden himself, and so I'm trying to figure out how we get to see the questions now. Oh, here we go. All right, let's take a couple of questions here. Nick2S wants to know, is this the blind date meltdown episode that we have been waiting for, or is the worst still to come?
I think the worst is still to come. We're only in leg 4 here. Not only is there a long race to go, there's also the possibility of another U-turn. And as much as the first U-turn kind of fizzled out on the first leg, after a lot of this stuff that went on, specifically at the end between Jaylani and Jenny and Matt and Ashley, there's a lot of potential for drama coming up.
Yeah, I don't think we've only had one insanely long flight.
Yeah.
And we're relatively staying in the same time zone. Like Japan and Thailand are not on the same time zone, but they're close enough that you're not getting jet lagged. They haven't done a whole lot of, they've been 2 legs, 1 country. Everybody's getting rest and everybody's eating and everybody's running what appears to be some pretty short legs.
Yeah, we need one of these insane 6-hour tasks. We need the Mentos task from Amazing Race Canada 2 that takes someone 6 hours to do and really works everyone's brains for them to really break down.
Yeah, we need a super leg at the bare minimum.
That's very true. I think it's again Schadenfreude. I think people are much better on this show when they're at their wits' end, and I think really exhausting them is going to be the way to get to that solution faster.
We have not begun to see the breaking point.
No.
All right, so JJ Rules wants to know, has the winds of fortune changed now that the blind dates are bickering and the dating couples are working together?
It's a good question. But like I talked about before, it didn't seem like these blind dating couples are really in any sort of danger. And I mean, we saw. Let's look at our date. So what dating couples do we have left here? We have Allie and Steve, who have been like okay,
Yeah.
pretty good. Mike and Rochelle. I don't want to bash them too much, but I kind of feel like their win last week was now a fluke, looking at their record, considering they fell back down again.
Yeah, but Rochelle did a really amazing job on that roadblock.
That's true, but but I'm not sure how many more mechanical roadblocks there are going to be. You know, that's definitely her wheelhouse, but I'm wondering what other fortes she may have. And then who else is dating?
We've got Matt and Ashley.
Matt and Ashley.
They're not
engaged.
really dating, so I can see why you would have gotten them.
Yeah, exactly. I just my mind went to engaged. I'll admit something. Not to go too tangential. It was a little weird to me that Matt proposed right there. Because usually when Amazing Race engagements happen, it's usually like right after they're eliminated. You know, that happened with Hayden and Aaron, and happened with Chad and Stephanie. Audrey
Chad and Stephanie were at the beginning of a leg when they
Oh,
got.
Was it? I thought it was after they got eliminated.
No, they were at the beginning of a leg. It was like the first thing that happened in the episode. It was morning, and they were in Oman, I think.
Okay.
And then it changed their little thing. Like you watched it change from dating to engaged. But they got eliminated, I think, that leg or the leg after. So it was pretty close to the end.
Which was better, their Chiron changing from dating to engaged, or when Chuck and Millie went from dating virgins to just dating?
That was mean.
That was one of the only things I liked about Amazing Race 4.
That might be the most epic shade that Amazing Race producers have ever thrown at a racer.
Yeah, it was pretty great. But I guess to answer the original question, so I still don't think that we should count the blind dating teams out. I think that these dating teams are, you know, they're fine, but they haven't been having the strongest showing aside from Mike and Rochelle last leg. So I still think that there's a good chance a blind date team's going to win the race.
Yeah, I think so too. I think they've really, but I do think that the dating teams that are left, like we've kind of gotten the chaff sorted out from the wheat. And
that's very true. Yeah, I don't think anyone expected CJ and Libby or the flight crew, I forget their names already, which I feel bad for, to actually, you know, go far into the race. Jonathan and Harley maybe, but it seemed like clearly just Jonathan is Piglet from Winnie the Pooh and is frightened of everything. I don't know if they were much long for this game either.
Yeah. Well, that actually leads us into our next question. Crystal Palmer wants to know, seems like nothing is Jonathan's thing. How many times this season has Jonathan informed us something is not his thing? And it leads to the question, what is his thing?
Singing. They didn't have a singing task yet.
Yeah, but they had a dancing task, and he wanted nothing to do with it because dancing wasn't his thing.
Yeah, which is, so, I mean, granted, I think New Kids was a little bit, like, just before my time, so I haven't seen many videos, but didn't they dance in New Kids?
Well, they danced a lot. Yeah, they were very talented dancers, but he said he always hated it, and it took him forever to learn.
Okay, so that's old man Jonathan clearly was not as spry as these young kids learning dance.
No, clearly not. But I also don't remember, like, I was not, like, you couldn't escape New Kids when I was that age, but I don't remember. I remember Joey McIntyre being, like, Joey and Jordan were the ones that had the real pipes.
Yeah.
They were the ones that did all the singing, so if he wasn't singing and he wasn't dancing, what are you bringing to the table, John? Come on, man. Well, are you just like the quiet, sensitive one? Because, I mean, granted that worked on me, but, you know.
So it's, again, because it was a little bit before my time, was Jonathan Knight like the Joey Fatone of New Kids on the Block?
I would say he was kind of the one that seemed like he was along for the ride. I don't know if I can make an exact comparison. He was more the Chris Kirkpatrick.
Oh, if only he had that palm tree haircut like Chris Kirkpatrick had.
Yeah, because Joey was definitely the Justin, and Jordan was probably the Lance. And I think Danny was more the comic relief Joey Fatone one. I don't really remember. It was a very long time ago, and I was really more of a Debbie Gibson kind of girl.
Oh.
But okay. I would say Jonathan was definitely the George Harrison of the New Kids, if that helps.
That helps a little bit. I would say so. At least he's not the Ringo.
Yeah, no, he's definitely not the Ringo. He's the George, if he's anybody. But yeah, he what was he bringing to the table there, apart from like being kind of cute and shunning heavy metal music?
I think he was supposed to bring ratings, but I don't think that happened.
Yeah, it really, they were kind of a non-starter. Adam Driscoll wants to know, was Harley and Jonathan's race effectively over when last week's equalizer failed to equalize them?
Yeah, I think the nail in the coffin came when there happened to be a flight to Bangkok at like 6 a.m., like a couple of hours after the other teams all got there. So if there was one at like 8 or 9, they maybe would have caught up. But because there was a flight so early, they really missed any opportunity to catch them.
Yeah, it's true. Like, if some of those teams had not made it onto the first flight, and some of them had to take that same flight, I think it would have been a lot closer.
Yeah. I think which is, again, unfortunate, and maybe one of the other setbacks of a course like this is not really stratifying the flights aside from the first leg. But if they had a couple teams at least to compete with, they might have had a chance. Because other than the speed bump, they ran a pretty good leg.
Yeah, it seemed like it was pretty solid. Of course, you can't ever tell when it's one of those situations where they're so far behind everybody else. They're not going to spend a lot of time on someone really messing up.
Now, when you heard that the speed bump task was to make a Thai grasshopper, did you do what I did in your mind, immediately went to making a drink?
Yeah, you want some creme de menthe and, I guess, like, what do they drink in Thailand? Some rice wine and creme
curry.
de menthe.
It could be, yeah, they could do like a switchback to that task from Amazing Race 24 of like having to pour in the pyramid.
Yeah. Yeah, because, well, I know soju is Korea and sake is Japan. I'm not sure what they drink in Thailand. But I guess, a grasshopper is an actual grasshopper made out of leaves. And that thing looked hard. Honestly, that's one of the harder-looking speed bumps I've seen. Yeah,
and I'd be right there with Jonathan. That would not be my thing either. I have no sort of craftiness or like really hand-eye coordination. So I would probably that would be I take my first statement back. That would be where my race would end at the speed bump. I would have to give up.
No, you never give up. And of course, you had Phil tweeting during the episode. They never know what's going to happen. They're going to have to stick to it. Yeah, there's almost never in Amazing Race history, in like however many hundreds of episodes we've had across the world, almost never has there been 2 non-elimination legs in a row. Like, we kind of knew. As soon as we saw them get the wrong flight, we knew what was happening at the end of that.
Yeah, not since the early days. I remember season 3 had one case, and then, of course, last season was a little bit of an iffy case with the final 4. But other than that, it's something that doesn't really exist, and I mean, for a good reason. I think, as we saw last season, people get frustrated if nobody gets eliminated for 2 weeks, and now with the break, an additional 2 weeks on top of that.
Yeah, that is insane. And this break, I got to tell you, man, I think it's going to be bad for the show.
Yeah, it's tough. I mean, Survivor's taken those breaks before too, and they've done okay, but they've also been on Wednesdays. But yeah, this is not. I don't know, Jess. I don't want to eulogize the Amazing Race too much, but I hope they can string together for at least one more season. But this is going to be a tough one. It's going to be tough to bring the crowd back in April.
Yeah. I mean, it's going to be. They've got an uphill climb ahead of them for sure.
Yeah.
So Cameron Taylor wants to know, shouldn't Haley and Blair have been penalized because of what Haley did at the roadblock? She told Blair where the clue was. Is it just me, or are those not doing the roadblock not allowed to say anything to the partner that's doing the roadblock? I didn't catch this. That's interesting.
But that's almost never been a rule, right? I feel like only when it's outlined in the roadblock that you can't communicate to your partner can you not do it. I mean, look at the freaking box task that they did in Nagano. The partners were able to instruct the people competing as to what to do.
Yeah, I feel like they get instructions on that and I know from talking to racers that you get like 2 pages of instructions that cover every single eventuality. So I have to imagine that if they weren't allowed to do it, they would have gotten talked to. But it does seem like it's not really the spirit of the law that you can give somebody specific instructions. I know there's been a lot of, you can do it, focus, yay. There's
go Twinny.
Yeah, go Twinny. What are you doing, Twinny?
Well, maybe I'll posit that Haley was the only person shown vocally telling Blair what to do because she was the only partner telling someone what to do.
That could be it as well.
Like I wanted to see Haley take that task and be like, no, Blair, you come do it, and then lecture him about where it was.
Yeah, that's about par for the course. Yeah, okay, Sam Lane's got it. Oh boy, we're getting our first winner's edit comment. Somebody call Stephen Fish back. Was the segment of Bergen talking about how he needs the money but Kurt doesn't the beginning of a winner's edit? I'm calling it now. They're going to win.
The winner's edit, it doesn't really exist on The Amazing Race because The Amazing Race likes to show people are competing for money in a variety of ways. I mean, let's look back at Amazing Race 20. Let's look at Mark and Bopper, who talked for a series of episodes about how, Bopper's daughter was sick and how Mark needed this, and that, and they didn't win. They just got a very sympathetic edit. So, maybe Bergen and Kurt will go far, but I don't know if this is like saying like, oh yeah, they're gonna win because of this. I mean, David and Connor had the biggest sob story of the whole cancer storyline, and they didn't win their first time.
Yeah, but they sure did the next time, and they had an even bigger sob story.
Yeah, being old.
Yeah, he's old, and he almost lost a leg, and they had cancer, and he's old. Yeah. So, I would disagree. I think sometimes there is a bit of a winner's edit. Like, we saw this with Amazing Race Canada this past summer, and I don't want to get too far into going down the Amazing Race Canada rabbit hole for our, domestic-only viewers, but Mickey and Pete didn't win a leg all season, but you still got this sense that they were really excellent racers, and they kept talking about, what they did off the race and what they were going to do with the money and how great it was going to be if they got that money. And sure enough, they were the ones that came out on top in the end.
Yeah, I'm thinking more so with Bergen and Kurt, it's a little bit of just emphasizing how different they are. I mean, Bergen said that it's a little bit like the Prince and the Pauper, or like a City Mouse, Country Mouse thing of, he's kind of had to work hard all his life, and Kurt is from a very affluent family where he really hasn't had to work. So I think it's more so the editor saying, like, man, we brought two people together from two different walks of life and had them compete on the race. So maybe it's just more interesting from a storytelling perspective.
And it also helped you tell them apart, because they do look a lot alike.
Yes, Kurt is rich and Bergen is not. That's how I'll remember it now.
Oh yeah, well, Mnemonic's your dear friend, but who saw them winning this week's? Like, nobody's going to get that point in their Fantasy Amazing Race League.
Yeah, there's between them and Mike and Michelle, there have been some very unconventional leg winners these past couple legs, which is exciting. With Jelani and Jenny winning the first couple legs, I think everyone was ready to see like, oh great, here we go, we're gonna have another dominant team. But no, it's been nice to see the pack a little more spread out. We haven't seen that in a while in U.S. Amazing Race.
Right. Instead we get like Jim talking about the four fingers and the thumb.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. So Mr. Airsonic says, I loved all the chaos of this episode. I think it's the best one so far. Are we going to get more eating tasks? Well, I personally, more eating tasks is always good.
I think we'll probably get one more, considering that the eating task was only to eat one egg. We haven't gotten our requisite eat a bunch of something, So I have a feeling we'll get that soon. Maybe when they finally head out to Asia. I believe I was corrected in the chat room that I believe they're going to Bavaria next episode. So maybe we'll get some sort of Bavarian pastry next episode.
Yeah, that'd be pretty good. Well, they had in Poland in the first Amazing Race All-Stars, they had to eat 2 pounds of sausage.
Yeah. That's true. Did they have to make sausage as well? Oh no, that was Amazing Race 6. They had to make sausage.
Yeah, they've had making sausage a couple of times, but yeah, and they made haggis, which looks kind of like sausage in one episode, and
oh yeah,
there are many things that can be done with ground meats, and many of them involve volume eating tasks. So yeah, I could see it happening. Yeah. I could certainly see that being something coming up. And we've had like a skill-based eating and a disgusting-based eating. We do need the volume-based eating to complete the trilogy.
Exactly. The trifecta of eating challenges on Amazing Race.
Yep. So Justin Driver wants to know, even though Haley and Blair argue they've placed second for 2 times now, are they going to keep this up?
Yeah, I mean, that's tough, because I think once they don't argue, they're a pretty strong team, and I think independently, it's one of these cases where independently they're strong racers, but put together, I'm not so sure. I could see them if they go. I could see them going like 5th or 4th. I don't think they're in danger anytime soon. but I think if they have a downfall, it's going to be their inability to get along.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, they're starting to get the hang of it now, and I think they're one of those teams, like, I could see other teams kind of falling apart as they go down the line, but I think they're starting to get used to each other's style at this point, and I don't think they're cannon fodder by any stretch.
No, not whatsoever. I mean, I think you were correct in picking them early on as your winner's pick because they showed strong individually. It just so happens that when they got put together, they were not quite the match.
Yeah, they looked good on paper, but
on a prescription pad, they looked good together.
Yes, I'm going to take one more question just because this occurred to me during the episode and I did want to talk about it. But Nick 2S says, "How much do you wish that someone mistakenly drank their milk before the cat cafe?"
I wish that, again, sadist in me wishes that they had, like, the cats would have to drink the milk and then they would have to drink the milk just to watch Jenny and Jonathan just freak out about it. Jonathan's face would probably get all puffy and Jenny might just quit the race right there.
Yeah. If they had this task last season, there is a 100% chance that Robbie would have drank the milk before they got there.
Yep. Absolutely. He's like, oh, great, milk. Here we go. Robbie would have also, like Matt and Ashley, eaten the eggs before he even got to the 100-year-old eggs.
Yeah, pretty much. I don't know. And there was one more thing that I wanted to bring up, and a couple of people brought this up on Twitter during the episode, and I can't remember. I apologize for not giving credit to the people that thought this up, but it was pointed out that the teams that got the date night in the last 2 episodes have wound up at the very bottom of the pack.
Ooh, date night curse.
Is there a date night curse? And should Laura and Tyler be afraid?
They might. But by the way, the date night got pretty shrugged off this episode. They got their last clue, and Tyler and Laura were like, oh yeah, I guess we got the date night. So good on you, racers, for shrugging off that thing that you did. Because it's one of those things, like, I don't think it's a direct causation, because it's not like Ashley and Matt were like, oh, we're so hungover from spending all night on the beach with our champagne that we're not able to run this leg. It just sort of was like a bad luck type of thing. Kind of like for a while with Amazing Race, I think it was like the team that there's like a specific leg where if you come on first, I think it's leg 3. If you come on first on leg 3, you won't win the race. It's just one of those patterns that seems to hold. And I mean, Matt and Ashley kind of got a little unlucky this leg, mainly in trying to find the pit stop. But also, I mean, they got pretty stood up by Jaylani and Jenny too. So we'll see what happens with Tyler and Laura. I don't expect them to do that badly, but if it does, then if we start to see a trend building, then we might start to see a Survivor Blood versus Water-esque type of thing of people giving away their date nights to teams that they want to see fail.
Yeah, throw it in the fire. Throw it in the fire. Throw it in the fire.
It's basically going to be like another U-turn.
Yeah. Like, they just leave it, like, they could just stick it to the U-turn board when they U-turn someone.
By the way, here's your date night.
Yeah. You have to complete the date night after you complete the U-turn.
Exactly.
Yeah. So, we got some sad news in Amazing Race World. We've got 2 whole weeks where we're not going to be doing anything at all with Amazing Race things.
That's sad. Again, I would agree with the comment that was said before that this was one of the. I think for me this was the best episode of the season thus far, and I'm sad that the momentum's going to be drooping for the next couple of weeks, for the rest of the month actually.
Yeah, and I was very dismayed to see this season on the Amazing Race preview, because we all know what happens when you get one of those for Survivor.
Yeah, but I think they've done that before. Maybe I'm thinking back in the days when Amazing Race did like recap episodes, and they showed like this season on.
Well, they had that, like, they used to do a clip show back in the day when these were shows that had ratings. You would have a show in the middle where it would sometimes be a special night and time, and they'd say, here's what you've missed in the first 5 episodes.
Yeah, the S they should have shown of Amazing Race.
Yeah, and then like 30 seconds of new scenes sandwiched in there. Like, here are some people in the airport that you didn't see before, or maybe you already saw it on the website. Yeah. I didn't learn anything really remarkable from this preview.
No, it seemed like it was just teams arguing. Looks like Matt and Ashley get into a kerfuffle with potatoes or yams or something. Other than that, and Jenny was walking across a tightrope, but they're really, I'm sure there are people in the forums at RFF or Sucks that are going to be dissecting it screen cap by screen cap, but it really hasn't yielded much information.
Yeah, it's not all that useful. And plus, we didn't get any scenes of like people saying shockingly horrible things to each other, which you almost always do when you get one of those in Survivor.
Yeah, there's no like, I made the biggest mistake in Amazing Race history, or so you're leaving the game. There was no like definitive statements of big moments happening.
Can we get medical down here?
Exactly.
Dead.
They should. You know what? They should have just piped in some Jeff Probst quotes in the middle of that. Like coming up on Amazing Race, like, oh, I hate driving in this cab with you, so we're pulling you from the game.
I've never heard anybody say something so terrible.
It is time to vote.
Honestly, if I was ever on The Amazing Race, I would use so much hyperbole just so they'd have those sound bites.
Yeah, absolutely. Even if I was in dead last, I'm like, oh no, we're winning. We're going to be the winningest team that ever won this game.
Yeah. Or, I don't think anybody on the show has ever made a mistake so terrible.
Exactly.
We're certainly going to die.
These people are worse than Hitler.
These people are worse than Grant Bowler.
Oh.
Well, that's a bridge too far.
That's a bridge way. Do not go invoking Bowler's name in this context. We are a happy podcast.
Yeah, we sure are. We're not going to be glowering at anybody in our grandpa sweaters.
No.
There was one thing in the preview that I was a little bit into.
What's that?
There was some on-the-mouth kissing between Jeff and Jackie.
Ooh. Hopefully it's not a kissing booth task where they're forced to do it.
Oh, yeah, it could be.
That needs to be a task for Bergen and Kurt and for Haley and Blair.
Yep. In this task, teams must make out with each other for 30 seconds.
Until a judge approves of their kissing.
Until a judge decides they have been sufficiently passionate.
Exactly, until it seems like they've fallen in love.
Yeah, I'm sure it was one of those things like off camera there are other racers standing there and there's like a bottle in the middle and they're spinning it.
Yeah, that could be some of the things during Eat, Sleep, Mingle. Spin the bottle.
Yeah. So, Mike Bloom, thank you for doing Amazing Race recapping with me while Rob is off being in his cousin's wedding party.
Of course. This is a lot of fun.
Rob doesn't get a lot of nights off, so I'm happy that we're able to step in and provide him with one.
Yeah, I'm happy to be the babysitter for the Amazing Race podcast.
Yeah, I was specifically instructed that I was not allowed to call you temp and disdain your opinions because, in Rob's words, this is not Survivor Historians.
Yeah, well, I'm glad to know that you would have if that wasn't the case.
Oh, I definitely would have.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Yeah, how could you not?
Yeah, I'm kind of sad we didn't get a chance to hang out more during the whole massive cluster that was Survivor Know-It-Alls Live because I could have done it to you in person.
Yeah, exactly. Well, next live show, and a special shout out to everyone who was there this past week. I guess I'll speak on behalf of Jess and myself that it was a lot of fun to meet a lot of fans out there. It was a really surreal and cool experience.
Yeah, we have it. I've never been at an internet fan gathering of that many people.
So has this eclipsed TarCon as your favorite reality fan gathering?
Well, we got as many reality stars as show up to your average TarCon.
All right. So this is the new TarCon.
Yeah, maybe this is the new TarCon, and honestly, I think we need that. But it was crazy. There were so many people there, and you guys were all so incredibly nice. And I was really happy to meet so many people that like the podcast and people that want to talk about Amazing Race, people that share this passion, because for the first 10 years of my reality TV watching career, I never talked about it with anybody ever. So It's been very gratifying to meet all of you, and I hope that we'll continue to deliver quality product for many years to come.
And maybe one day you guys will do an Amazing Race recap in New York.
Maybe we will, but I'm pretty sure we can't sell out that room.
It's okay. I'll bring 1,000-year-old eggs.
Oh, well, yeah.
For everyone.
1,000-year-old eggs for everyone. That's wonderful. Mike, do we have a hashtag for this podcast?
I was thinking something along the lines of like TAR torture porn. I don't know if that's too risque. We could go with like TAR torture or tarcher.
Torture. Well, you know what? Rob would probably disdain TAR torture porn, but Rob's not here, so I say that is our hashtag, TAR torture porn.
I'm washing my hands in this situation, so I'm good. I'm good with that.
Yeah, I'll take the heat from Rob next week.
All right, perfect.
Or in fact, it'll be 3 weeks from now. He will forget all about it.
He won't even remember it.
We will do whatever we want on this.
Fantastic.
It is anarchy. So, Mike, tell us where you are on the social media.
So you can find me at a Mike Bloom type on Twitter. I generally shoot about a bunch of different things. You can also check me out on post-show recaps, recapping Once Upon a Time, and a bunch of other things here and there. So you can definitely find me around the RHAP networks at any point in time.
That is fantastic. And I am, as always, you can see it on the bottom of the screen if you're watching, but for the audio-only faction, I am found on Twitter at HaymakerHattie. That's Hattie, and I do a whole bunch of recapping of Amazing Race. You can check out my blog tomorrow, where I'm sure I will be rehashing a lot of the excellent points that were made tonight. And I want to thank everybody in the chat room for keeping up what has appeared to be a vibrant discussion. Everybody that is live tweeting the show along with us. And thanks to Rob for trusting me to have the keys to the podcast for the weekend. Thanks again to Mike Bloom. Thanks to Scott St. Pierre. Hope you all have a wonderful evening. Peace out. Good night.